Hey, so Mr. McCarty, we're here today because I just recently found out that you're an avid fisherman, and I just saw a picture of this really cool boat you've been working on. Got me kind of interested. How'd you get started with all that?
Yeah, so I was born on a tropical island, the island of Puerto Rico, and so just always surrounded by water. My dad was always big into boats. I can remember one of my earliest memories of him having me on a dock in Puerto Rico while he was getting a small sailboat ready, and I fell into the water, and that was kind of my first time of learning how to swim. But then I think where it really started to hit me was we lived in Miami for a while when I was in like second, third grade, and we would go to the beach a lot, and I would see these guys throwing these huge cast nets. You know, they were 15-foot nets, and they would throw them out into the waves, and then they would pull in what to me at that time seemed like all these just crazy monsters, and there would be this huge variety of animals that they were pulling out of the ocean, fish, sea rays, shrimp, all these different things that would come into the net. And for me, it was like this huge eye-opening experience that, like, wow, all of that is in the ocean.
Yeah, you don't think about it when you're swimming in there. It's all around.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah.
So that really got me intrigued into fishing, into just learning more about the environment, and so shortly after high school, my family moved up to New England and lived right on a river, right where it meets the ocean. And so our kind of love of boats and being on the water definitely, just it grew from there. And my dad got into building boats, as like a hobby at first, and then when he retired, it became his full-time passion. And he would spend 8 hours a day in his workshop building boats. And
Did he build them for himself, or was he selling them off to other people, kind of thing?
So he built them for a variety of reasons. He would build them sometimes as gifts. So he built me a boat.
Wow.
Yeah, or we kind of built it together. He did a lot of it, but because he knew that I love fishing, and so he built me a boat to go fishing in.
Wow.
My brother loves to sail. He built him a small sailboat. He built some kayaks so that we could take them and go camping with them. But actually the funny thing is the boat that I showed you that picture of, the name of the boat is Solo Mío, which in Spanish means only mine. So that was very much a boat that he was building for himself.
Yeah.
He was tired of sharing a boat with his brother, and so he wanted, so his solution was, okay, I'll spend 2 years working every day to build a boat.
Wow.
Instead of sharing it with my brother. But unfortunately, he passed away before he was able to finish the boat. So it's taken me a while to get settled and be in a place where I could take on that type of project.
Sure.
But over spring break, I brought the boat down here, and I have it on the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm working on it every weekend. And
You drive out. You keep it like in a marina, and you work on it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow! So you have your whole workshop set up out there too.
Yep, I got a lot of stuff on the boat that supplies and things I need stored on the boat. That's why you see me driving around a ratty pickup truck, because a lot of the things are in the back of the pickup truck. Yeah. So and I originally went to college at the University of Vermont to study environmental science.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was just so in love with being out in the woods. And for me, it was a lot like a church in a way for me. Like that was where I, felt really connected.
Yeah. I know the feeling.
And so, and I loved my studies in my first year. We learned so much, but it was a moment during one of my final exams where they were playing different frog calls. and you had to know 5 different frog calls just by the way that they sounded. And I thought to myself, this is really interesting, and this is something, that is a hobby and I'm passionate about, but maybe not something that's going to turn into a great career for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and ended up studying international relations. But ever since I would say that kind of those days of being on the beaches in Miami and watching people pulling things in, I've just been completely fascinated with what does the natural world have out there for us.
Yeah.
And so I've done a lot of scuba diving, to see what's down there.
Yeah. Where have you been scuba diving?
So a little bit up in New England. I actually learned in Vermont on a lake. It was very cold.
I bet.
Yeah. The first day, the day we went for our test, they had to break a little sheet of ice off of the top.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was really, really cold. But some of the nicer places I've been are the Yucatan Peninsula down in Mexico.
That's where I went on my honeymoon.
Yeah. They have these caves that have filled in with water. They're called cenotes.
Yeah.
And so it's all fresh water, that filled in to caves. And so I got to go diving in some of these caves.
Wow.
Yeah. My mom's side of the family lives in Venezuela, so we've done a lot of scuba diving off the coast and on some of the islands off the coast of Venezuela.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Have you been out near like the Galapagos out there?
I have not yet.
No.
I've only been as far south in South America as Colombia, so I haven't gotten all the way down to the Galapagos.
I got you. Okay.
That's a dream of mine, though, because obviously some of the richest biodiversity in the world is on those islands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even when my wife and I went on our honeymoon in Mexico or in the Yucatan Peninsula there, just jumping in the water when you get hot on the beach, you see 30 different kind of fish go scattering, and I saw that and wondered, not that it was the first time that it occurred to me at all, everybody watches nature shows and stuff, but it occurred to me like, wow, there is so much going on under there. There must be all these different kind of food sources and all this other stuff. It's like this whole hidden world that we just kind of go splash around and go wee.
And worlds that are so different from one another. So, like my experience of, scuba diving in the Caribbean Ocean, and seeing all these bright, colorful fish, compared to, the type of fish that can live in a dark cave in fresh water, compared to, what do the oceans look like in New England, where, kind of rocky and cold, and it's just amazing the different types of animals you see, and just how different those worlds look from one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to do a little snorkeling, and I used to be on swim teams growing up and stuff, so I had really strong lungs back then. Got to go to Australia, and I got to do some snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. So I got to swim around in Nemo's world around there. It was amazing. See, it's such a complicated world under there, but
and I just want to say something else about the boats. So obviously, it's easy to go out and buy a boat. You can. There's actually boats for free. You can go on Craigslist, and people are trying to give away boats.
Yeah.
So it's if you're into it, it's something that it's fairly easy, to get yourself a boat if you really want. But for me and my dad as well, there's certain things that they used to always be made by hand and were really kind of a craft and got to the level, I would say, of art, and that are starting to get lost. As we're getting more and more technologically advanced, and we're able to, build things, without using our hands as much. And so I think it's important to be able to kind of hold on to some of those traditions and to some of those ways of life that, you know, can produce some really beautiful, pieces of art, really.
Yeah.
And kind of reminding yourself of what the origins of it are.
Yeah. There's cultures all over the world that base so much of the art that we think of as famous from, the Phoenicians in Lebanon now, or all kinds of other, the Samoans or the Hawaiians or whatever. So much of their art and their lifestyle is based on the way that they interacted with the ocean and the sea. Their boats they made, that's a huge part of their culture. The way they teach their kids to grow up and interact with the natural world has a lot to do with the way they actually enter it on a boat. Yeah, that's really neat. You got to grow up with somebody who knows how to do that.
Yeah, and he pretty much taught himself and just read some books and then passed on a lot of that to me. And and I would say I've also come to, at first when I started fishing and just being out on the water a lot, it was about, just how many fish you could catch and who could catch the biggest fish and things like that. Yeah. And I've fished with people where that is their livelihood, and then that is what they need to do in order to eat and to, pay bills and things like that. But I've gotten to a point where it's really about being able to appreciate what is out there. Mm. And so, for example, striped bass are a huge part of the Chesapeake Bay. Yeah. And the fish that the females obviously are responsible for most of the breeding, and the females are the biggest fish. So males only get to be about this big at their largest on average.
Wow. Like 3 feet?
Yeah, 3, maybe 4 feet. But you can have females that are literally 6 feet. Yeah.
Wow.
So
big mama.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big mama, and she does so much of the breeding and does so much of the work of carrying on that species. Mm-hmm. And so, as I kind of gain that knowledge, I've come to realize now that keeping the big keeper, that big fish that the trophy that everybody's trying to go for is really damaging. And I think that the laws in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay are kind of backwards, where at the beginning of the season, which is right now, they call it trophy season. And so you can only keep fish that are over 33 inches long.
Wow.
And so the 90% of those fish are going to be females.
Female, yeah.
And it's also at the time where all these striped bass are coming into the bay to breed. This is where 90% of the spawning of all striped bass for the entire east coast of the United States, 90% of their spawning happens in the Chesapeake Bay in a short period of time, in a couple of weeks, which is happening right now. Huh. Which is also the time where it's trophy season and you can only keep the biggest fish. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that there's work to be done around some of the laws and the regulations.
Yeah. I wonder if I don't know, I'd have to read more about it. I wonder if they made that law because they are assuming that if people are out in the middle of the Chesapeake, if they catch a big one, they're gonna be like, I gotta take it home and show everybody, I'm not gonna throw this back. So they'll, let them take the one that they're the most excited, but not all the other ones, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right, but that's artificial selection. That's like people probably causing these fish to get smaller and smaller by taking all the big ones out of the water before they can make babies.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And I think it's also just, to limit the number of fish that people can take home with them, because the number of fish that are over 33 inches is pretty small, as compared to the rest of the fish out there. So I think it's just a way to limit, how many that people take, but it's also taking out the fish that are doing the most work to to make more fish.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Huh. Are they? Do you know about how the population of striped bass is doing? Are they still fairly healthy in terms of numbers?
Yeah, they've. Yeah, I fish with some people and just have people in my family who've been into it for a while, and they say that, you know, back in the 1970s, that they started to take a real hit, and that the number of striped bass started to really go down. They were being overfished by commercial fishermen, people that were doing it as their livelihood, and so they put in some laws into place, and kind of just in the nick of time, and before the species was wiped out, and they've made a really good comeback, and we're at the point now where they're almost back at the levels that they were, you know, in the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
So they're doing pretty well. And I know that there's been a lot of work done on the Chesapeake Bay to help clean it up.
Yeah.
And that's another big reason why this fish is now kind of back where it used to be.
Yeah.
Because the area where they spawn is now, you know, and they breed is now clean and healthy for them.
Yeah. Cleaner, at least.
Cleaner, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a pretty similar story to what we're studying in science now about shad. Same kind of thing that's happening with Maryland blue crabs and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah, it's interesting how much individual people have to pay attention to what they're doing over the course of a few years, but even more so, it's surprising to me, and I think it probably confuses a lot of people who aren't involved with fishing personally. You know, why is there a government department who studies fish, some random fish in the ocean? Why do they study that and then tell people how many they can take? It seems like kind of a silly job to people who aren't involved in it all the time, and it's really amazing how many times a cycle like that has happened, where people take so many of something that it starts to not be there maybe anymore, and then a law goes into effect and it slows down a little bit, they come back, and everybody's like, whew, almost lost them.
Yeah.
And then they go do it with something else.
Yeah. You know, and every time you do that with one species, it has effects on others.
Yeah.
So we were talking before about shad, and how, yeah, their numbers have gone so far down, and that's used to be one of the main sources of food for striped bass.
Yeah.
And so when I talk to people who've been fishing for a long time, they said, oh, you know, there used to be just tons of shad around, and you would see just huge schools of them, and you know, and that's when you knew that the striped bass were around, because that's what they love to feed on. And then, you know, I've never seen a shad. Literally one.
Wow.
In all the times that I've been out fishing.
Wow.
You know, yeah, it has, I think, repercussions on other species. You know. Yeah. I'm sure it does. It absolutely does. In all those complicated coral reefs and stuff we were talking about earlier, like, it's just not as easy to see in such a crazy complicated place. But yeah, no, the head scientist on the project, on the shad project, has said during the late 1700s, the shad populations were so huge that Congress would shut down on the first day they started running up the Potomac River, because they couldn't vote on anything. There weren't enough congressmen who would show up, because they were all out fishing. So he said one of his goals is to get the shad population back to the point where Congress shuts down for a day on the first day of shad running and spawning. But you know, it was actually similar. I used to live in Pennsylvania, and they did a really good job of hatching trout, you know, small freshwater fish, to the point where they were able to bring them back in, you know, their rivers and streams, to the and to the point where there was so many of them that then on opening day, it wasn't like an official day off of school, but so many kids and so many families would be out fishing on that first day of trout season, because you just knew that there was going to be tons of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was again the work of government departments and and individual people being really concerned about what's going on with this animal. And putting in a lot of hard work to get it back.
I never went hunting myself when I was growing up, but I went to a school with a lot of country kids near Richmond, Virginia, and on the first day of deer season, the first day of turkey season, at least half the school was not there. So it was like watch videos in every class one day, because it works for animals too. Even even right down the road in Virginia or Maryland, since deer don't have those natural predators anymore, there's a lot of them, which is why you see them by the side of the highways, and they're like just popping out of the woodwork everywhere. So all the kids who grew up hunting at my high school drive their big jacked up monster trucks into the parking lot. But on the first day of hunting season, all of the row of trucks that we called Redneck Row, all those trucks were gone because they were out there taking care of the deer population, keeping them down so they didn't wreck people's cars on the roads anymore.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you wanted to know about my background with boats, with fishing, with the water?
I don't know. I can't think of anything right now.
Okay.
It was really cool hearing about it.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm working on this boat, Solo Mio, just about every weekend. So I'll keep bringing fresh photos of where it's at. And if you have any cool pictures of stuff you've caught or seen or whatever, I'm sure the kids would love to see them. Yeah.
I would too.
Yeah.
It's not just for them.
Big sea turtles.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I got to go scuba diving. There was a really strong current, so I was just kind of, being taken in the current, and right alongside of me were sea turtles that were this big.
Wow.
Chomping on the corals, and I got some pretty cool photos of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's I feel like most of the kids who have come through Chavez Prep probably don't have a whole lot of experience with that unless they've visited family in Central America or something. But other than Finding Nemo, other than watching them ride the current like that, but it's so cool to see in person. It's definitely that kind of experience growing up was the kind of thing that changed me into the dorky science guy I am now. It's like there's no turning back once you're face to face with something that's out there and that you only otherwise see on nature shows.
I'll leave you with one last kind of funny story. So there's this fish that's found down in the Caribbean. It's called a bonefish, and it's about anywhere from that to about that big. It's not good for eating because it's full of bones.
It's the name, yeah.
That's the name. And but they are super fast. I mean, can just fly around. And so because they're so fast, they're kind of prized by fishermen because it's such a hard fish to catch. Yeah. So people spend thousands of dollars getting, guides to take you out, to get the right fishing equipment, the right boat, and thousands of dollars. And and I've gone out just kind of on my own and tried a few times and could never even barely see one. Then when I did finally see one, to be able to get my line to it, not a chance. And so this fish had frustrated me for such a long time, and I had learned so much about it. And then one day I was sitting on this dock in this little island called Bonaire, which is right next to Aruba, Bonaire, then Curacao, right off the coast of Venezuela. So I'm sitting on a dock, and there's this young boy, he's probably middle school age, and who lived there, and he comes out on the dock, and he has some fishing line, and he has a little metal screw or nut or something tied on as a weight.
Yeah.
And he's got a hook, and I think just a little like feather or something, kind of flashy or something tied onto the hook. And he comes out there, he goes like this, and he throws, the line out there, and within seconds, he's got one of these fish, and within a minute or two, he's got the fish on the dock.
Wow.
And he's showing it to me, and he's holding it.
What?
And I'm like, wow. Some of us do so much, and then if you're really just connected and you really know kind of the habitat and you know what the fish eats and what their behaviors are like, you can be, a young kid and just
totally
snap it up.
Young experts.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think about that. So many of our kids who spend most of their childhood in DC, they have so many survival skills to survive here in DC. They can spot a gang member like 2 blocks away, or like know how to weave through the cars as they're jaywalking or something. But yeah, growing up on that island, that kid learned how to pick up. That's really cool.
So
local experts.
Yeah, I have a photo of him with the fish. I'll bring it in. It's
cool.
a good one.
Nice.
It's a really good one. So
nice.
I figured I'd leave you on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to tell me and us eventually about your background. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.